Welcome. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the February 8th meeting of, or sorry, not February 8th. Today is February 22nd. I was looking at the minutes of the Rent Control Board meeting. This meeting is now called to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Flora?
Here.
Commissioner Phyllis?
Here.
Commissioner Trosis?
Here.
Commissioner Duran?
Here.
And Commissioner Foster?
Here.
All present.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if the commissioners could take a look at the minutes from our last meeting, and then I'll entertain a motion for passage of the minutes.
I will move. Oh, I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
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 The minutes are approved. Are there any announcements from staff?
Yes, I have a few. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. I have a few things I'd like to mention tonight. First, I'd like to tell you that as of February 4th, Dan Costello is now the official public information manager for the agency. We're very happy to have him in that position.
No, he's acting.
Yes, he was acting since Neil's retirement, but now he's officially in the position, so we welcome him to that position. Very method. I also tonight wanted to mention that the City Building and Safety Division is implementing a simplified plan check process for the soft story retrofitting buildings with a supplemental permit application that owners will fill out, just answering some very simple questions. They may be able to skip the City Planning and Mobility Division review for those permits, which will allow them to proceed more quickly. Additionally, for the means and methods plan for the soft story retrofitting, it's a simplified plan. It requires the owners to acknowledge the municipal code requirements for tenant protections during construction and tenant relocation if necessary, and requires them to say that they will abide by that. But because most of this work is done outside the units, it shouldn't have a significant impact on the tenants. So they're trying to make this as simplified as possible. And for anybody that's interested in learning more about the seismic retrofitting program, you can check on the city's website at smgov.net/seismic, or better yet, you may want to attend the next community meeting that happens on Thursday, March 8th from 10 to noon. People who attend will be able to hear from city staff and engineers about the retrofitting process, and they'll be able to answer questions. So that's the second of 4 community meetings that the city will hold on the seismic retrofitting program. I also wanted to mention that the board's next seminar will be owning rental property in Santa Monica. That will happen on Tuesday, April 3rd from 9:30 to noon. It's a great opportunity for property owners and managers and anybody else who's interested to learn the basics of the rent control law. And to sign up for that, you can go to our website at smgov.net/rentcontrol or call our office. I also wanted to mention there's a fair housing workshop that's going to happen on Tuesday, April 24th from 9 to noon at the main library. This is always a very highly attended event, so anybody interested should contact the city attorney's office to sign up. Or you can go to our website and link to the city attorney's office if you want to sign up for that. And finally, I wanted to mention that anybody interested in receiving emails from the board, agendas, or any announcements that we make, you can sign up for our electronic communications from a electronic communications sign-up link on our home page. So please do that if you're interested. And then one final thing, we have a handout from a member of the public that is going to speak to you during public comment. So if you'd like, I'll pass this out to you.
Yes, please.
I have a question.
Commissioner Terosis, would you like to ask a question?
The simplified plan check process for seismic retrofitting, can we put instructions about that on our website? I know it's not within our purview, but I would imagine that some of our property owners might want to avail themselves of that information if they went to our website.
I think we could put a link to the fact that the city has a website related to that, so certainly we can do
Okay,
that with
I would
information.
appreciate that. And then I assume we're going to use social media and other channels of publication for all of the events that you mentioned so
Yes.
that people are aware. Okay, great, thanks.
And Commissioner Flora, you had a question for staff?
I do, thank you, Madam Chair. I attended, that doesn't matter. My question is, no, it's not on. At our information session regarding owning rental property, do we ask people to sign in and state who they're representing if they're with a corporation?
We do ask people to sign in, but they do not have to say if they're representing a corporation.
Okay,
But
well,
we do have a sign-in sheet, and we
Okay.
ask people to sign up in advance
okay,
as
thank you.
well.
And do we add all of the sign-in participants to the email database if they provide an email?
We will ask them if they want to be added to the database. We haven't been doing that, but we will start doing that.
Very good. Thank you. All right, if there are no other questions, we'll move on to the section number 7, public comment. This is the part of the meeting where the public gets to address the board. We ask that you honor your time limits and speak in order. Our first speaker is G. Bonart. After that will be Lori Brown, Santiago Brown, and Nicholas Gross. All right, Mr. Bonart.
Are we ready in a minute as soon as they're there?
Okay.
In case the 3 minutes runs, I'm Gary Barnard. I'm happy that you're all here and we're all here together to get this done. You have this on your desk to keep a highlight in your mind. As I proposed last time, square footage as a tax basis. In any other organization, any other thing that functions, it's usually based on square footage. So when these pass-throughs come in, there should be a parity or an equitable tax responsibility for a larger or a smaller unit. Communal areas, who covers that? The power pass-through, that was about 10 or 15 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, when they passed through that owners of buildings could apply a $10 fee at that time, which aggregated into the current, when was that, please?
I think it was 2000,
So
2001 for
that's had
utility.
15 years to garner more funds for the owners. If they switch to solar, their price has been eliminated, our costs have stayed up, not mine in particular, but due to that point. Resident owners, can they write off the pass-through of the taxes when they do their taxes and say, we paid 10,000 tax, of which the residents paid 5,000 of that? Do they take the whole tax off? Do we take the tax off because it's part of a rent or business operating or something like that? That should really be looked into. Interest on security deposits. About this same time, they stopped paying back interest on security deposits. Some people have lived in these in the area with a deposit held by the owner for 40, 50 years. That's easily triple the money they've had in, or more. And over a building that's holding 20 or 30 units, that's a lot of money to let the ownership control that money. If the building is sold, where does that money go? Does it go with a former owner, or does it go with a new owner? Where is that money that people have paid in and have either left or forgotten in a more transient situation? Protection of seniors, low and fixed income tenants. You really need to address that whenever you have somebody that's in there that's going to do your summary as to how things are going to go. New totals of building sales that weren't up the last time. The number of units that were sold was not listed. It listed like 73, when all the prior years were listing hundreds to 200s, 300s. There were the chart. I can't remember the name of the chart, but it was sales over the past several years of properties. Okay, so this can be a forced turnover by the law of lower grossing units. You know, if you can't pay, if you get a bill for $200 a month for additional taxes that comes through, some people have quoted $150 to $200. I think they'll speak later. That's like a forced outage. How are you going to protect the face of the community, as rent control was established to do? Is the board of the city responsible for legislation that violates the spirit of rent control? You know, our base is diminishing, our prices are going up, and we're rewarding businesses. That's great for businesses. I can't do anything about it. You can. Excuse me, may I continue just for a minute to finish this?
I'm sorry. Thank you for that was your time.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And we have your sheet. Thank you very much. Sir, thank you so much for your comment. Okay. And we would direct you to staff. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your name in there. A couple of your points can be answered by state law and some other things. You can avail yourself of staff to go over your sheet with you if you have questions about a couple of things in particular. Okay. Commissioner Trosas, did you have a question for the speaker?
Yeah, I do have a question. I would like to know what your idea was for liability for slow or inadequate response by the city or the board.
Well, it's been 5 years in the making. Or the presentation showed the sales of units and things like that. So a lot of people are being driven out of their homes. Their rents are reaching astronomical to them. If the city was wrong in how they addressed it or didn't address it quickly enough, as in this over here, you probably have that too, that you should check where it says, I don't understand how it got confused that anybody prior to March 1st of 2018 is, according to this, owner may no longer pass through these tax surcharges. Is that in direct opposition to what you said the other night?
I don't know if staff wants to answer that. It should not. It is consistent with what we've...
Right. No, the elimination of surcharges would only be if a building is sold after March 1st. And in the letter, the cover letter that went to the property owners, that was very clear because we mailed this to all property owners so they had the new info sheet. We will clarify that. I see the point that you're making. It's not as clear as it could be. So we will be resending this to all of the property owners in June, and in the meantime we can post a more clear explanation on our website. But I understand your point.
Yeah, and I also would like to echo your point. I too found the website to be a little bit confusing. I think that we need to make sure we plain language some of the information for the public, so thanks for bringing that up.
I hope I don't get arrested, but if you include a definite email for the owners of all controlled properties, then you can have them pass all this through for you like that.
Thank you for your comments tonight, sir. Thank you
you
so much. Okay. Lori Brown? You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm taking my time starting so I can catch my breath. I have so much to say. Good evening, everybody. I'm back here in front of you as a partner. So I really want you to understand that, to me, we're in a partnership together. And I believe that protecting our buildings, as well as our tenants and our landlords, is what our community is about. And this is why I come here, and this is what's been keeping me up at night. I spend obsessive hours, I think, looking at what's for rent, what the rentals are, what's for sale, why it's for sale. and I came across some information that I thought that I needed to share with you tonight. There has been over 95 units. There's 35 active units as of this week pending for sale, buildings for sale. They're either the first time on the market because our population is aging or the building is aging. Also, we have 10 out of those 35 that need retrofitting. There's 98 that I could show you here today, but Santiago and I had a little trouble with our printer and didn't really want to overdo you with paper. I also want to share with you, and I didn't bring enough, that daily I get mail from developers or solicitors or realtors, and they send me letters that eventually I'm going to start believing. This one says that the Santa Monica City Council voted in favor to restrict building sizes on lots in Sunset Park, blah, 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 blah. So basically, there's plenty of developers in your area, a small window, we can rush the plans through, or better yet, we can buy the building top dollar, all cash, even within 24 hours. I get them so often that I throw them in the trash, but then when I was thinking maybe you guys didn't know about it, I thought maybe I should still collecting them. I did, couldn't find them, but I could again send you emails and emails of what I get every day. I want you to also answer, I was asked a question earlier, which, how many buildings, and I think the gentleman before brought it up, in 2014 to 2016, a total between 70 and 80 buildings were sold. In 2017, we had 17 buildings sold, and since the beginning of 2018, I believe, with the 35 additional, we have a 98. That's showing a trend that scares me. I also looked at the rents to see what it would take to buy the building, and went through all of the little processes, putting in all the little configurations. And there's a couple of buildings that blow my mind because I know that there's no way that it could be maintained in the condition that it is. Some of these are even coming with plans. So I want to bring together that I believe this board should start maybe looking in a progressive new way and look at how to maintain our buildings as well as keeping our tenants and our landlords happy. I can sit here today and give you some of the reasons why I think that we're having a challenge, but I believe that our population is aging. I believe our buildings are aging.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Flora has a question for the speaker.
I do. First of all, Commissioner Brown, thank you for being here. I want you to know I really do know you care a lot. And I'm sorry if I've not made that clear enough in the past.
Thank you.
And I know you really wanted to get a lot in there, and I want to help you a little bit by asking you to repeat some of what you said at the beginning, because I got a little lost. I heard 95, 35, and then 10 out of 35 need retrofitting. Was this you taking sort of a look at the buildings in your family's or your company's portfolio, or was this what just happened this week citywide? I got a little lost at the beginning.
That is
there.
an excellent question.
Yeah.
So I'm going to clarify that. I've contacted 3 realtors and 2 offline when I submitted like, oh, I'm interested in that building, send me some information. So I've basically a total of 5 different areas of collecting the data. And what I have here in front of you is 1 through 98. It will show the 36 pending. It won't show you the one that sold last week. Okay? It will show you some that sold within a previous time frame. So what I'm trying to to answer your question, I did some thorough research, not in my family portfolio.
This is multiple sources, though. Okay.
Multiple sources that you would easily be able to find yourself if you looked on the MLS or on Chula or called a local realtor.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and now we have Santiago Brown. You also have 3 minutes.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what my mom had said, and how it's important to have the two, the landlord and the tenants, be safe. And I just wanted to do that because in the future, I hope I'll be running the department we have and all that stuff, and I do a lot of the work, and it's just all the expenses and everything that we have to do, especially with all the things that have been passed, all affect the cost of keeping the building and maintaining it. So I think that if we have kind of like a 50-50 with the tenants and the landlords, we can definitely get a lot of progress. and it would just be so much more fair for everybody else in terms of like all these new things that keep coming up, and as well as my mom said, all the listings and all those things.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking. All right. And finally, for public comment, we have Mr. Nicholas Gross. You've requested 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm going to be pretty quick tonight. I'm only going to talk about policy. I think the board should absolutely enact or make a policy that no applicant for a rent control exemption can live in a dangerous demolition zone in order to remove themselves from rent control jurisdiction. It's very simple. The city has a policy that a owner needs to meet 7 criteria. Not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, but 7 for 7. They miss one, they don't get the exemption. That's the policy that's on the books, and that's the policy that should always be enforced. And the last thing I'd like to say is the rent control office now under Dan's leadership and Stephen and Haka, they've been incredibly helpful to us. And I don't like owners trying to pull fast ones or con jobs on any of these guys. And I know you guys have a great information technology department, and nothing's going to ever get by these guys again, not like it did before, because it didn't get by them before. But now I think that everything is under tight controls, and every exhibit, every piece of evidence is looked at thoroughly and cleared by various departments, and that's just the way it should be. If people would just listen to the rent control department, your decisions would be easy. You guys just need to, if somebody hits 7 out of 7, they get an exemption. If they don't hit 7 out of 7, they don't get an exemption. They don't come here and tell stories or try to present things to the board that weren't presented at certain times, or they were looked at, and they didn't meet people. If they don't meet the criteria, they don't meet the criteria. And I think it's really wrong for people to even be able to claim an exemption once they get a demolition permit, once they get a construction permit, to claim to you guys they fenced off this area and they're living in it when they're not. It's a demolition zone. They would never get away with it in Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, and now I'm sure they're never going to get away with it here, but it's been a lot of work, especially for Dan and Stephen and Haka, and I just want to thank everybody for helping out and for listening, and hopefully I kept it to just policy tonight, and I'm sure you guys will work it out. All right, so thank you very, very much, and I'll stop now, even though I haven't hit the 3-minute mark. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, that concludes public comment. We'll move on in the agenda to our administrative items. First up, we have item A, consideration of whether to appoint an advisory body or subcommittee to gather information germane to possible additional changes to regulations respecting tax-related surcharges. And may we have the staff report?
Yes, good evening. This evening, the board is not considering whether or how to limit tax-related surcharges to controlled rents. Rather, it's considering which process would most effectively give all stakeholders the opportunity to fully and frankly communicate their views about that issue to the board. At its last meeting, the board identified 3 possible processes and asked staff to advise it on the pros and cons of each. Those 3 processes were 1, holding a series of meetings of the full board, 2, appointing an advisory body, and 3, forming a subcommittee to meet with stakeholders and report back to the full board. As detailed more fully in the written staff report, staff believes that the 3rd option, forming a subcommittee, is the one most consonant with what the board hopes to accomplish. Holding a series of public meetings to hear from stakeholders would pose no legal problems and would certainly have the virtue of full transparency. But the board has noted in the past that it is the same small number of stakeholders who come to the board's public meetings again and again, and it is unclear that holding a greater number of meetings would alter that fact. Moreover, the public hearing process has some, albeit minor, barriers to full public participation. Any meeting of the full board must be noticed 72 hours in advance, and once scheduled can't readily be changed to accommodate attendees' late arising inability to attend. Some stakeholders may be unable or unwilling to attend a public meeting at a time convenient to the entire board, and each public meeting of the board costs roughly $1,000, so holding additional meetings has some cost, which must be weighed against the meeting's likely utility if they don't result in the desired public participation. Appointing an advisory body is likely not within the board's authority, as explained in greater detail in the staff report. Even if it were, it is unclear what an advisory's body remit would be, as there does not appear to be any aspect of the substantive issue that requires special expertise to understand or analyze. A subcommittee appears well suited to the task that the board has identified, gathering stakeholder views in a manner that is both efficient and thorough and would incur little or no cost. Because the subcommittee would be empowered to take no action other than to gather information and report to the full board, together with any recommendations that it wishes to make, any ultimate decision by the board would still be made at a public hearing, preserving transparency. Because of the three options that the board has identified, forming a subcommittee appears to be the best suited to the board's stated goals. Staff recommends that the board select that approach unless, after hearing from the public and holding discussion, it appears that a different approach would be preferable. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now we'll have public comments. Unless, Commissioner Flohr, do you have a question for staff, or do you want to hold your comment until after public speakers?
I had a question, but it can wait till the public has had a chance.
All right. So we have 4 requests to speak on this item. The first is Jennifer Kennedy, followed by Michael Tarbett, Nanny Grinnell, and Sonia Sultan. All right, Commissioner Kennedy, you have 3 minutes.
Is this thing on? Okay, cool. Hi, I'm just speaking on my own behalf this evening, not as a planning commissioner, but I read your staff report. I just wanted to come by tonight to tell you my thoughts on your upcoming workload. I don't think you need an advisory panel. Do you think you need an advisory panel? I would say no, I don't think that's necessary. About forming a subcommittee, I've been giving that a lot of thought, and I also don't think that you really need to form a subcommittee to do the work that's ahead of you. I think the idea of a subcommittee was a good idea, but as time has gone on, to me, based on everything that I've seen and heard, I really feel that you're a very capable board who knows full well the issues in front of you. And I believe that now is the time. It's important for you to begin discussing these items in public meetings and voting on solutions. And a subcommittee would delay that action. Do you need to set more than a couple of meetings to get through it? No. I don't think you need an overabundance of meetings. You're a capable board, again, who knows the issues. You don't need to use up resources or increase your workload. I know the staff report in front of you is saying that having extra meetings there would be a cost burden with that. But I don't even think you need to have extra meetings. You just need to sit down with your staff, take a look at their workload, agendize, maybe get ready to agendize a couple of meetings right away, and you can get through these issues. Just go through normal protocol for public meetings without any extra ones will enable you to move expeditiously as a full board and ensure public participation. I'm really interested in seeing the full board discuss this and in the public eye. And finally, if you are going to do nothing, okay, to further limit the tax-related surcharges to control rents, then you're done, right? You go home, that's the end of it. But if you are going to do something, I simply recommend that you create a plan, put it on a couple of upcoming agendas, and work through it as a 5-member board. I don't think it will take as long as possibly proposed in your report if you stay focused, and I think you can do that. And thanks very much for your hard work and the upcoming work you're about to do. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. And next we have Michael Tarbett.
Well, that makes it simple for me because I feel the same way. I think you have a very good grasp of these issues. You've studied them and you've presented them to the public, and you may have some differences, but that's what public bodies are designed to address, the differences, and have votes. And I don't think you need any subcommittees or any expert appointed bodies. I think you just need to face up to the fact that you have to make a decision and make it.
Thank you for your comments. Nanny Grinnell is next.
So all I can say is it's me again. And I've been to all the meetings since October, pleading for help. And I know that Regulation 3120 got passed, but it doesn't help me out whatsoever or anybody in my building. It helps everybody after March 1st, but I don't see anybody here from after March 1st. And I assume that I'm a stakeholder, right? I'm a stakeholder. But if I'm not mistaken, I can count on maybe 2 hands the number of tenant stakeholders that have showed up at these meetings. So how are you going to get the input from them? I keep coming and pouring my heart out. I wrote you a long letter, a long email before the last meeting telling you about our building and the breakdown of the humanity in the building, how many disabled, how many single mothers, all of that. But, you know, I don't know what else I can do, and I don't know what else, you know, where are the other people? Where are the other 33,000 tenants in rent control apartments? So why don't we have a front page explaining everything that's going on? Because so many people are completely oblivious to this. You know, and I've knocked on so many doors and made so many emails and comments and called people, and it's very difficult. But I'm here again, and I'm not afraid to say, I need help. This is bad. $125 additional a month, every month. And like the staff report said a while back, it may be forever. It may be for 20 years, not just 5 years, maybe for 30 years. And I can't do that. Not on top of the rent raises and everything else. And I also made comments in my letter that I wrote that, you know, my landlord, who's been nothing but nice to me, is raising the rents to outrageous numbers, and that you cannot worry about these people who are doing that. So you might have to take it on a building by building basis or something, but something has got to be done about 3120 because it's just not fair. Thank you.
Commissioner Flora, do you have a question, a clarifying question for the speaker?
Well, I think it's clarifying. I wanted to ask about her, if I may. First of all, I want to thank you for coming to all the meetings.
Sure.
And I know this is a very, very serious topic. I'm not trying to make too light of it. But if you really like coming to these meetings, you know I'm termed out this year. Just something to think about. In all seriousness, I did want to ask you about your interactions with your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank you for the work you put into that email. But can you give me a sense about the level of knowledge that they have had or not had about the fact that these discussions are going on at the Rent Control Board? Is there, I mean, we haven't been getting much local media attention, but do they word of mouth, or do they even know that we're talking about this?
No.
Yeah. And my second question is, do you attend your own neighborhood association meetings? Do you go to your neighborhood association and go to those meetings?
No.
Okay.
No,
right.
I don't even know about a neighborhood
Okay.
association meeting. But I did put the issue on the Wilmont.
That's the yeah.
That's the association. I put a big notice on there a couple weeks ago about this meeting and about the issue of the tax pass-throughs.
Okay, but you don't normally attend. I'm just curious if you were hearing things there. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your comments. Okay, Sonia Sultan is next. You have 3 minutes.
Oh, good evening.
Yes, as the previous speaker indicated, these issues are very important, very compelling, and the work you do is so important to the tenants and to everybody in the broader community. We really appreciate your services. But in reading the staff report and the 3 options that were considered, first of all, it does seem to me that with the broad authority given to the rent board, that you probably would have the authority to create an advisory committee or a task force if you wanted to. I don't think that's necessary in this situation or desirable. And I also I agree with the previous speakers that you don't need an advisory, you don't need a subcommittee of your board. You're only 5 board members. And the problems that were identified as far as lack of participation by the broader public, I don't see how that could possibly be improved. I think we need more public process, more openness, more transparency, not less. And if you created a subcommittee, it seems like you would be cutting out the open public process or narrowing it rather than broadening it. I think, as the previous speakers said, you're a very knowledgeable board. You're able to give great thought to the issues before you, and I think the important thing is to do it in a series, even just a few public meetings to thoroughly air the various issues that are under consideration and the things that need to be addressed, and make decisions. I think creating some other committee to do that is only going to extend the time and probably end up, and then you'd have to come back, and in order to have a full public process and an airing in public, and allow public, the constituents from the public to weigh in, then you'd be somewhat repeating that process. So why not just do it with the full board and open it up to the public for public comments, all the constituencies that want to weigh in? I don't see why that would be so hard. If there's a need to get the word out more broadly, then let's find a way to do it. But I think that that the best practice would be to have the full board consider these options, discuss them, listen to stakeholders, and then deliberate and come to some conclusions. Because I think these issues are very timely, very time sensitive, and need to be addressed in the best interest of the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you to everyone for your public comments tonight. That closes the comments on this administrative item. So we'll begin discussion. Who on the dais would like to begin the discussion? All right, Commissioner Flora.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you to those who came to speak on the issue. I think as we deliberate as a team tonight, I think it's one of the things that I would hope to establish from the outset is just to remind us that we all very much want to take action and provide our renters relief. So that's not in debate. We are really just talking method. And let's remember that each and every one of us really want to help these folks. I came into the meeting, I think one of the reasons, okay, let me start here. I came into this meeting a big advocate of the subcommittee approach because I've been on 3 subcommittees in 7 years. Most of them were in my my first term in office. And I found them to be incredibly effective. The partner, the colleague that I had in each of these subcommittees, it allowed us to be very nimble. And while I appreciate Ms. Sultan's remarks, I actually found that we ended up speaking with more people from more diverse parts of town and interests than we would have just having meetings, because again, some people, I don't see neighborhood association leaders at our meetings, and I was thinking, I've heard my colleagues even say, let's get out there, let's go to the neighborhood associations, ask them to agendize this, and then we'll hear from those people. A two-person subcommittee would allow us to do that. That said, it sounds to me, and I could certainly be somewhat persuaded by the fact that, yeah, guess what? We've got a standing meeting every month. Let's put it to use, and if we have to stay late and hear from a lot of folks, I think it'd be very worthwhile. I will say, and I do mean this in as earnestly, as tongue-in-cheek as possible, is that I think one of the reasons we're here tonight discussing method is because I really do think that there's a difference of opinion on how many meetings it's going to take. I know that there are some who would love to meet on this weekly, if they could. There are those of us who don't think that's necessary and think it's a little bit dramatic. This is a very serious issue and people need relief very, very soon. But I think one of the reasons we're here is I could see us taking option number one and the suggestion quickly arising that we need to meet every week until whatever. That does not allow our staff enough time to prepare the next idea, the questions we've come up at a meeting, the questions the public has arisen, and anything new we can think of. So I could be persuaded to do it as we meet every month. But I'm going to be the first to tell you that I'm not impressed by anyone that thinks if we just meet every week for 2 straight months, that's how we show we care. We do care, as I said, from the very outset. We all want to provide the residents of this city and the renters relief. So I've had a positive experience in coming up and co-authoring Measure GA, Measure FS, and in working with some of our folks in the landlord community on budget issues. I had a lot of enjoyment from the subcommittee process, but I would be open to just let's get the work done in meetings. But let's, use a full meeting, and let's understand that people need time to prepare for a reasonable number of meetings. Finally, the one thing I would say to my colleagues, and I would certainly strongly encourage of my colleagues, is if we took options 1, 2, or 3, or A, B, and C, either one that we choose, whether we are dissuaded by the General Counsel's arguments on option B, and we want to put together panels of experts and have a big, congressional hearings style tour around town, whatever the option we go with, one of the ways that we can really make sure this doesn't go on forever is we just simply give ourselves a deadline. The deadline I would recommend is that we vote on a proposal of some kind by April or at the latest May of 2018. So that says we need to have, a few 3 to 5 solid meetings between now and May, 3 meetings between now and May, what have you, a panel of experts and stakeholders that can really get together fairly quickly, or a subcommittee that can really work together fairly quickly. I know that several of my colleagues have been frustrated by the pace of this issue and think we should have done something about this last year. Believe me, I wish we'd done something as soon as we realized this trend was happening. But the way we do this, whatever motion we pass tonight with regard to what method we follow, the second part of your motion, if it's not my own, would be that I request that you give us a deadline. Give that subcommittee or give us as a body a deadline, and that will take care of the goes on forever problem. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Flora. Commissioner Duran.
Thank you. So I came to this meeting persuaded in the idea that a subcommittee would be the most flexible way to reach out to the community. It was mentioned earlier tonight that by a couple of people that despite our word getting out by the methods that it is getting out, not a lot of people are showing up. We're not getting a lot of new faces here. And my thought was that having a subcommittee that could go into the community to talk to them, as opposed to asking them to talk to us, would be a way to get this word out. Now, I don't know about the appropriateness of that. I don't know, but that was my thought. Having heard the speakers tonight, I tend to agree with them that this is something that we could handle, and it seems that it would be a faster resolution to do it as a whole body by setting some deadlines, as Commissioner Flora set, such that it sets the process up. But my concern that I would ask that you all think about is what can we do differently to reach more people, to make them aware that this issue is in front of them and will affect them substantially in some cases, critically in others. And so I don't know if I'm just spitballing here, but if we decide to move as a whole body and not form a subcommittee or an advisory body, and just tackle this as a whole unit, whether we could arrange for ourselves to go into the community to speak at community meetings, to speak with the various association, put ourselves on their agenda so that we can get at the very least, get more people listening to what this issue is. So that is a suggestion for you all to consider as we deliberate. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Duran. Commissioner Torosis.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Duran took some of the words right out of my mouth there, because you know how much I love public engagement. I came to this, with a lot of thought, and I won't make any secret. I'm the one who initially asked for us to look at establishing an advisory body. The way that I see it, and the way in reading the staff report and having personal experience with all three of these types of decision-making processes, to me, a subcommittee and an advisory body really serve the same purpose. The advisory body is just that. It's not a decision-making body, and it's an advisory body. And although tonight I'm not going to advocate that we establish that, I do think that under my reading of our charter and under the Brown Act, it's perfectly within our legal authority to establish that. We are a legislative body. The California Attorney General has construed that definition under the Brown Act quite broadly, and I think that we would have full rights to appoint, a work group in the future should we choose to do that. But here, either option that you choose, you're doing something away from the board in additional meetings, and then coming back to the board with advice as to how we should proceed. And I do agree that that prolongs the process. And I do agree that it's not transparent. And if you don't know me yet, you know that I'm all about transparency and openness in the public. And I think that a subcommittee is veiled. It's not clear what we're doing. It's not open to the public. It's not noticed. And I'm not in favor of that for this really important decision. I think it completely diminishes our transparency here. I also agree with Commissioner Flora that we do need to do this in a time-sensitive manner. We do need to give ourselves a deadline. And I think that I'm comfortable with April or May as that deadline. I also am not advocating that we meet every week. I don't think that's a judicious use of resources. I also am completely prepared to waive any sort of fees we would gain from doing additional meetings. I don't think that that's necessary. I don't care about that. I don't think any of us do this for the $75 check a meeting that we get for doing this. And in fact, I don't care about being on city TV. I mean, I think that's great, but if we choose to have one or two additional meetings, I think they should be out in the public. They should be at the library, at community centers, on potentially the weekends if people are more able to come. I know that Commissioner Flora might freak out about that. But over and above anything else, we need to do a better job of letting the public know that we are deliberating about this issue. I myself, with Commissioner Foster, went to the Wilmot meeting when we thought we were going to do something about earthquake retrofitting. I wrote an op-ed in the Santa Monica Daily Press I'm absolutely willing to do that and more. I think we need to be getting out there at every single community meeting and letting people know. I personally, if we had the resources, would email every single landlord and tenant and let them know that we were discussing this and when to discuss it and when to come to give comment. I would also set up a public comment page on our website to take public comment from members of the public who might not necessarily be comfortable to come to a meeting and give their advice, because I would like to hear from everyone, and I'd like to hear all of the different options that people are thinking about and have people feel like their voice has been heard. And I know that we don't have the resources right now to do that email blast, but even a postcard to everyone. And I know that takes money, but I really think that people need to be properly noticed that we are considering this issue. And I'd like to do everything possible that we can to outreach to landlords and tenants to let them know to come to these meetings. If in fact we choose to do it as a full body, I am not proposing anything more than 2 meetings a month. And in fact, I agree with Commissioner Kennedy that we could get this accomplished at our monthly meeting if we do it productively. So I am in favor of a full body meeting and discussing this issue in a rapid manner.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Phyllis.
I think I can be brief because most of what I would have said has already been said either by members of the public or my fellow commissioners. I think while there are absolutely benefits to an advisory body and while there are absolutely benefits to a subcommittee, I'm persuaded by the members of the public, particularly that there is a desire for us to engage in public hearings and to do this as a body collectively. I think also it probably would be good for all of us to do it collectively, because I know each and every one of us really have a stake and care about this issue, and rather than kind of break groups off to kind of independently develop thoughts that may be out of sync with other folks, it does seem, I'm persuaded that there could be some efficiencies that are promoted by doing this through public meetings. I agree that if we commit ourselves to doing it in an expeditious way, that we absolutely can do that. And I really appreciate Commissioner Duran for your suggestion that the fact that regardless of whether we're in a subcommittee or we have a task force or we have an advisory body or we're doing this all collectively as a board, we still can go and do community outreach. Right, we can still do that. That's not, doing this as a board does not preclude any one of us from, heading off to Wilmot or heading off to Ocean Park or heading to an action meeting or heading to a Santa Monicans for Renters' Rights meeting. I mean, it takes a little coordinating of our schedules, but I think we can do that effectively. So I think I support my fellow commissioners in committing to a timeline. I support my fellow commissioners in doing this public outreach. I think there is room for improvement there, but I think we can meet goals that we set. And I appreciate that members of the public have turned out tonight to even talk with us just about the process of how we're going to do this. So thank you. That's it.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Phyllis. It's my turn. So the nice thing and the bad thing about being the chair is that you typically go last in the first round of chat, and so I thank to all my fellow commissioners for saying most everything that needed to be said already, along with members of the public. I too was leaning toward the concept of a subcommittee, but for various reasons, it is readily apparent that time is of the essence. Both for tenants and tenants groups and landlords who've been attending these last few meetings and wondering what is going on, what's going to happen to me. We need to settle that science, sooner rather than later for everyone's benefit. I do think that the idea of a postcard and buying space in the daily press and not waiting for them to come to us or answer our emails offering to talk to them, we should just go ahead and purchase space, and we should talk about the cost of that. and any of the other papers. Neighborhood meetings, whether or not I had earned a spot on any subcommittee or not, I was going to go to as many meetings as I could anyway. And so I echo what the other commissioners have said. We can all go to every meeting under the sun. We can even call individual building owners, individual tenants, stop people on the street. I did it for 30 minutes in front of a Starbucks the other day with some members of a local political group. I do think if we set our minds to it, we can do it in a public manner and sticking to meetings. But I would say that we do have, because of some board business and various things, we have a confusing schedule coming up. It's not just the second Thursday all the time lately. We've been adding meetings, and next month, because of a conference some of us are attending, it won't be the second Thursday then. So I think we need to be really clear and careful with the public as to what our meeting schedule is. And for instance, I'm going to be specific. We were talking about potentially having a March 1st meeting for other reasons. Perhaps we go ahead and make it, a full meeting and get this process started, because we have March 1st, March 22nd, then we have April and May. So, I'm completely open to doing 2 meetings in April and potentially 2 meetings in March in order to get these things out, because if we are going to circumvent the subcommittee or an advisory panel process, then what we're lacking right now as a board is direction. So I think a lot of us were waiting to see what the outcome of the consensus of the board was of this meeting to decide what would be tackled next, and maybe an advisory committee or a subcommittee may have come back with a suggestion for a board discussion item or for a regulation proposal. However, it sounds like there's quite a bit of consensus that I'm hearing that we might go forward just as a public body and get rid of the subcommittee process. Then in that case, if we can agree to either at the March, if there were to be enough noticing or anything for a March 1st meeting, or the possibility of a March 1st meeting, fine. But if there's not, I'll let staff address that in a moment. At least at the March 22nd regular meeting, rather than, this is my suggestion, my opinion, rather than trying to do it right here on the spot tonight, I would hope that all of my fellow commissioners would take this next week or two and start your questions, start your interviews with the community before proposing specific regulations or specific board discussion items, and those can be sent to staff tomorrow, next week, 2 weeks, 10 days, 5 days, 4 days from now. It doesn't have to wait, but if we're not going to do the subcommittee process, we need time to start gathering the information before we know what any one of us might want to propose or not propose. So I'm hoping for a deliberate start, and then for us all to collectively pick up that pace and get this resolved one way or the other. There are a lot of stakeholders, building owners, tenants, schools, parks, beaches, colleges, who all have a stake in this and who all have an opinion. So the quicker we get out there and start the process, the better, but with deliberation. So staff, I'd like to ask a question of staff while I'm still in the queue about the upcoming schedule and the location here at the City Council chambers and meeting schedules coming up specifically in March and April. If you could talk about that.
Well, so as you said, our next scheduled meeting is for March 22nd, because we usually meet on the second Thursday, but several of us will be at a conference. March 1st is next Thursday, so we usually prepare a packet for you and try and give you that a week in advance. So
Right.
if we were to schedule a meeting for next Thursday, we would not have much to provide to you. And if you're going to discuss this as a board, we really will want direction from you of what information will be helpful to you to bring
Okay.
back to you. So we could add a meeting. We don't have access to the chamber on the third Thursday of every month, so we couldn't do it on the 15th. So unless we did it someplace else, but we tend to have better turnout here in the council chambers than other places. So we could add a meeting, that really is it for March, the 20th, or I beg your pardon, we could add a meeting on the 29th. We have one on the 22nd, the fourth Thursday, we could add one for the 29th. And then for April, we have a meeting scheduled for April 12th.
So I would be, thank you for reminding me this is February, that short month. So I would be in favor of waiting until March 22nd to see what board discussion items members of this body bring forward to you. That gives us collectively a month from tonight to begin stakeholder, going out into the community, hitting every meeting we all can collectively hit in groups of no more than 2, and finding out what people think, and looking at real building numbers and real tenant situations, and hear from the schools, hear from everybody as quickly as we can, and in about 3 weeks' time, make sure that before the deadline of a publicly available packet that we've presented ideas to staff for board discussion items. The only problem I see is that if we're not meeting again between now and the 22nd, what if you get 5 suggestions for board discussion items and they're all conflicting? Can you offer any advice or guidance on how to proceed?
We would, whatever board discussion items there are, we would put those on the agenda because that's what the rules say. Any board member can bring up a board discussion item. So we would put them on the agenda and discuss them each based upon the presentation that the proponent makes for their discussion item.
All right, fair enough. Well, so to restate where I'm at.
Has more to add.
What's that?
Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Lewis, please.
When each of you was talking about how you wanted to proceed and what you thought would be the most efficient way to proceed, there was one theme that ran through all of your comments, which was the desire as quickly as possible to hear what the various stakeholders' views are on the topic. You don't need a staff report for that. All you need is just a notice of a hearing. So if the board wanted to, at the next meeting on March 1st, just do nothing but agendize hearing from stakeholders, there's no staff report that we would need to do. And if after hearing from those stakeholders, the board formulates some idea of what it would like to consider substantively, we can then prepare a staff report for based on those things that the board as a group comes to a consensus on, or at least something close to a consensus for the meeting on the 22nd. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So that's an interesting idea. So in other words, a public comment item. Is that what you mean? Just the public comment portion of the agenda?
No, it would be an agendized
public input on
this
a topic.
subject matter. Yeah.
Okay. I think that sounds like a wonderful idea because some people do want to come and have City TV broadcasted and have other people hear their views all at once. I can't think of a reason to oppose that idea, especially if we were going to be meeting on the 1st anyway, potentially. So,
Nicole's not going to be here.
Okay. Microphone.
I think to the board that I'm not going to be there on March 1st. So I was hoping to participate in this, but so just point of personal information.
Okay, and appreciated. Can I ask the commissioner a question? So if it were strictly public comment and not a discussion, would that preclude you from participating from afar, or would you have a problem with the 4 of us starting the process?
I am in San Jose and unfortunately traveling during the literal hours of our meeting, so it would be very, very difficult to participate remotely. So, I'm not quite sure what the answer is. I think I was kind of operating on the assumption that there would be a pretty limited scope meeting on the 1st. I defer to what my... Yeah, I mean, I would really like to be there. I feel like there's a lot that I would like to hear, and I would like to. I think it's important, to be there, but I defer to my fellow commissioners. I mean, I understand that there are, people have scheduling conflicts, and if my fellow commissioners feel like they really want to move it forward, obviously I'll defer to them. My preference would be to be able to participate.
And while I appreciate Commissioner Phyllis's desire to be here publicly, I'm also equally concerned that we get going, especially if we need to start the process with the board discussion items and putting that forward.
I mean, there's no reason why we can't give direction even tonight.
Well, that's your prerogative as a commissioner, but I was hoping we would take, unless people were prepared with a board discussion item, that's their right to do. But so anyway, I'm still in the queue, so I will move on to Commissioner Flora.
Yeah, just one more round for me. I think it sounds like there's some consensus in that we're ready to move on something, although I didn't know if there was going to be a specific proposal. If there's not a specific proposal, whether it's Monday or other time soon, there could be some advantages to having sort of a non-proposal open hearing of just hearing what people have to say. That what would make it most constructive, though, is we know what the problem is and we know what so many people are going through. What we would actually need people to bring is ideas of how they would do it. And whether or not we're actually going to get that is no guarantee. So there's the risk that we could say this thinking we're going to get lots of ideas, and it might just be more folks talking about their specific difficulties. Not that those aren't incredibly important, but we already know there's a lot of financial anxiety out there. We know it's huge. But if we're going to have something open, I would hope people would be coming to say, here's how I think you should do it. This share paid by this person, this share paid by this person, or what have you, sunsets, whatever. We need to hear the public actually offer their recommendation. And if they can't do that, I'm not so sure we have something just to hear more of what, we know that the problem's there, and we would miss, Commissioner Phyllis in doing so. But I also understand that we are eager to get something going. I'm not even close. I will try to be fast, though. I do want to remind my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Torosis, I know when she mentioned City TV, I know that you meant that as a financial savings.
Right. But
as a fellow adherent to transparency, it's one of our tools of transparency, particularly for people who aren't physically able to get to the meetings or just can't come to the meeting. Just a reminder that the reason we do this on City TV is in part transparency for those that can't make it. And I know you were thinking about the savings, and it's very important that we just remind everybody that City TV is about transparency as well. But I have to tell you, there's one reporter that's very good in this town about covering our work, and she, I think, deserves to be complimented. But, I don't know what it's going to take to get our local media to I find this, what renters are going through right now, an incredibly important, worthy of a front page issue. And so if any of you from the local media are, watching this tonight or in the coming days of replays, I don't know, do you need us to have a bird scooter here on the dais in order to cover the rent board? Do we need to also agendize, city employees' salaries? I don't mean to admonish the local media, but you editors out there, these are huge decisions that we're talking about that are going to be affecting tens of thousands of renters in this city and landlords. And I don't even think we've been on the back page of most of your papers. So I just would like to, put a little bit of a challenge out there that you might be a part of letting the local public know that we're talking about this stuff. It's kind of important. And, I'll just say this. I'm ready to move ahead with whatever motion my colleagues are most happy with, but thank you for those of you that are attending and for spreading the word to your neighbors. I hope that we can magnify that by, times 1,000 and really get people aware of this issue so that we can get not only a diversity of stories and narratives of what other people are going through. I think we have a pretty good idea, but maybe there's some people out there that really have great solutions, because we're going to need your ideas as well about what action or actions we should actually take. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Flora. Commissioner Terosas.
Thank you. Just before I get into what I think our next step should be, I have to say I agree with Commissioner Flora. I do know that Kate Cagle does cover every time we have a meeting, so I do thank the Santa Monica Daily Press. But in case any of you haven't noticed, there is a critical mass of jurisdictions in the state looking at renter protections. Our real estate costs, particularly in Los Angeles County metro area, but across the state, have just skyrocketed. This is not an issue that's just happening in Santa Monica. This is being covered every day in the Los Angeles Times, every day across the state. I get the news clippings from throughout the state Housing and Community Development Department. This is a really urgent, dire issue. People are falling into homelessness because they are not able to maintain stable housing that's affordable and available to them. So I see this as one tool in the toolbox to combat this issue, which is why I just think it's so important that as the rents continue to reach record highs, that we do our small part to try to abate some of this. So yes, everyone should cover this so that we can get as many members of the public here as possible. But in any event, in terms of what I think our next step should be, I do think March 1st would be a great time to just hear public comment, but I do feel that I'm hearing the same public comment, which I appreciate. Thank you. But I think we need more than that. I would like to see an engagement plan, like an actionable, community engagement plan from staff on how we're going to do this. And I think that includes what neighborhood meetings we're going to and when we're going to try to get earned media and when we're going to try to get paid media and how we're going to do that, what kind of social media campaigns we're doing, what kind of outreach we're doing to both landlords and tenants. Again, whether it's through electronic channels or postcards, and what the timeline looks like for this entire campaign, so that we can make sure that we're getting way more people here. In terms of what Todd said, or Commissioner Flora said, though, we need proposals, not just, this is awful, because we know this is awful. We know this is a problem. We've talked about this for several months. I would like to see, maybe this is a radical idea, but I would like us to invite stakeholders to come and make a cogent presentation to us as to what their stakeholder group feels would be a permissible way to go about this, and then we as a board can sit here and deliberate. So I would like to invite, for example, 1 to 5 community leaders from the landlord community to come and give us their proposal, and 1 to 5 community leaders from the tenant community come to give us their proposal, and community leaders from the schools to come and talk to us about how this may affect future measures coming forward. Why is this so funny? And potentially an economist if we think that that's necessary, although at the end of the day you can find data to back up anything you want. It's really a policy decision, we all know that. But I would like to see different options for what should the apportionment be per these different groups between the landlords and tenants. How far should we be retroactively looking at this? Should we look at it all the way back to 2012? Should we look at it further back than that? When should we be looking at potential future sunset dates? Should we look at a ban altogether for all pass-throughs? And finally, if we're going to consider a cap, what should that cap be? I know that some of these options were originally laid out in our first staff report. I think it's worth going back over that if we are to invite stakeholders to come and give us a presentation as kind of like a springboard. And I personally don't think that we would have those well thought out proposals by March 1st. But correct me if I'm wrong. And if there are people here who feel like they could get their proposal together for our serious consideration by then, great. But I think that would be a good starting point, and I think it makes sense to do that at the March 22nd meeting at the earliest. And so that's how I feel. And now in terms of how we would make that a motion, I don't know if people agree with me or not, but that's what I feel the next step should be.
Well, we've got a couple more commissioners in the queue. Maybe it'll become apparent. Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Trosis. Commissioner Phyllis.
So I think public information campaign and an engagement campaign to get people, one, understanding what we're asking for, and two, given sufficient time to come up with kind of a cogent, well thought out proposal is a great idea, because it's something that we haven't done, right? I mean, we've kind of been batting these ideas around amongst ourselves, but we.
No, go ahead. I'm thinking it out. That's right.
So we've heard a lot of members of the public, but we haven't invited formal presentations from members of the public. And I think asking people sometimes to come up, what's your best plan? What's your best offer? That can really kind of crystallize things. So you can really identify what's important to who, and how do we kind of reach a solution that addresses the most immediate need, which we're hearing about these really acutely affected tenants, while also being sensitive that we don't want to hurt landlords who feel like this might be a dividing line for are they going to flip their building, are they going to sell it to someone else, are they considering LSA? I mean, I think we hear it a lot, but listening again and really asking for people to come forward with clear proposals is a great idea. And I would be very happy to do that at the March 22nd meeting. I think that also gives people have full notice of it. So that's like a good step, I think, in our public information campaign, which is something that seems like we're doing as a goal here. I don't think if there's anything. I mean, I'm prepared to make a motion or to support another motion where we solidify a timeline with a April or very early May kind of conclusion date, with the understanding that the goal is not to be adding meetings, but to engage in the quality of outreach, including recruiting folks to come to our meetings. And with the goal being that March 22nd meeting is, the opening kind of discussion with stakeholders.
And just to clarify, are you suggesting that we invite, I mean, of course, all members of the public could come and talk, but invite certain people at each meeting to come and give us their presentation about the ideas?
Yeah, not at each meeting. I think it would be good to have it at one, kind of all together.
Okay. Just clarifying.
All right. Sorry, are you still?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm in the queue. I'm Commissioner Trosis made it crystallize for me as well that March 22nd, and something you said as well, we can wait, and it's really important to have the full body here if possible. And let it be known to the public, though, in asking questions of staff about our agenda, if there were to be a March 1st closed session, I was informed that we still gavel in, and we can still do public comment if anybody wants to. Is that correct, or is it just about the closed session agenda?
Yeah, if the only agenda item is the closed session, that would be what they could talk about.
Okay, well, then in that case, everyone would need to wait until March 22nd to reach out. However, the five of us can't stress enough, and staff, how strongly we feel about public engagement. It's been said up here 8,000 times. And what we want is for everyone to realize all the different mechanisms. You can email individual board members. You can email all 5 board members. You can send one letter to the staff and ask them to distribute it to the board members. And we do want to hear case studies, and we do want to hear more details and evidence of specific cases. But the public should know that we also have the ability to ask staff to bring us loads of data on buildings, we've already seen a lot of it in our staff reports. So for some of you who might be listening for the first time or attending for the first time, we do have a lot of really helpful mechanisms by which to gather the data. And I think it's clear that all 5 members of this board and staff understand in general what the various categories of stakes are. So I hope you will trust this elected body and our very capable staff to debate this with you publicly here over the next few weeks. So I don't know that we need a motion because we're not acting on anything other than to schedule meetings. So if the consensus is that our next regular meeting is March 22nd, we can take it from there, and we could decide at the March 22nd meeting whether or not to add an additional meeting or not in April. Right?
Do we need to?
Commissioner Trosas, do you have a question about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I would say is that would it be reasonable for us to review at our March 1st meeting a public engagement strategy by that point? Like, could you get something together in the next week for what our engagement strategy is going to be, so that way we do have a little bit more notice to the public as to
And there could be public comment.
what
on that,
kind
so.
of, yeah, of course there could be, but what kind of engagement we're going to be doing going forward. I mean, because I think time is of the essence. I do not want to wait until March 22nd to then hear about what the public engagement strategy is going to be, because we've already had missed opportunities by that point. And like, if I need to be going to community meetings in between now and March 22nd, and I don't know when all of them are, like, I want to start going to them.
All right. Commissioner Flora?
Wait, I don't think we answered the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We could we could have a public meeting on the 1st where we would provide you with what we can put together for an engagement plan between now and next Thursday. We could, get a list of when the neighborhood meetings are and develop a plan, so we could have that as an agenda item next Thursday.
Would we need to have City TV for that? Do we need to have City TV next Thursday?
Can we have them, but you can choose not to if you
Can
want.
we waive City TV and our $75 stipend next Thursday?
I don't think that that's prohibitively expensive to.
No, I don't know. I mean, I think like we are very cost conscious, so I'm always trying to look at ways to lower our costs.
I for one would be more inclined to waive my $75 fee than City TV, because I do believe that there are seniors and disabled. All these people I drive meals to, all they have is the daily press and City TV. That's it. That's their only way to engage with us. So I think it's money well spent.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. I'm fine to waive it, but I guess the question is, are we considering a public item? If it's just a closed session, do you need City TV?
It would have to
No,
be public.
it's just a closed session.
Okay, so that's the thing.
But this would not be a closed session. That you cannot just.
I understand that. So that's why I'm weighing, like, should we do it next week if we only have one item and we have to pay for City TV?
May I? I don't mean
Yes,
to-
please, Mr. Lewis.
When I wrote in the staff report what the cost of the board's meetings were, it wasn't to suggest that the board's meetings are prohibitively expensive. It's just because the board specifically asked what are the costs of these things. There's, Ms. Condon's going to present the budget shortly. A $1,000 cost is not really something that, I mean, the board has meetings that it's supposed to be holding. That's not a cost that the board should be afraid of.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Does that conclude your question? Can we?
Question.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do we agendize something for next Monday or not? Excuse me.
Let's hear what Commissioner Flora has to say, and then let's wrap this up.
Yeah, I know we want to get close to a motion, and I'd even be prepared to make it, but I see 2 of my commissioners are waiting. We'd essentially be agendizing our public item from here on the dais would essentially be us discussing a community engagement strategy, and the public would have an opportunity to see it.
Yeah.
That's essentially it'd be a glorified meeting to discuss our public engagement strategy. Okay, that's fine. I think we can all put together a list of where we're going, where we could go without your help. The one advantage I would say, though, is we'd be doing it publicly, so we would show the public that we are avoiding all going to the same meeting, which might be an important message, because we can't all go to the same meeting. We can't even talk to one other commissioner between every other meeting about any agenda item because of the Brown Act, which is a good thing. So I would not be against that. Just want to let you know for anyone who might be making the motion, even myself. That was my question. And I don't want anyone to ever think I would not be willing to meet on the weekends, Commissioner Torosis. I have but I have two standing meetings every weekend that I try to make. One is an outside interest, and one is a fellowship that I'm involved with. So I not only think that a weekend meeting would be glorious, and let's put this one to bed. Let's put this one to rest. This feud about weekend meetings. I think we should even have it at your and Dan's house.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner
Right.
Flora. Commissioner
All right. Thank
Phyllis, you are next.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Oh, good.
Or to move.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah. So I move that we set a hard deadline to resolve this by May 1st, 2018.
Wait, May 1st or first meeting in May?
The first meeting in May. Thank you. So first meeting in May, that we use our best efforts to agendize everything, to resolve this during our ordinary course of meetings, scheduled once a month. I support public hearing on. I would like a public hearing, to be clear, on the 22nd, not just a discussion item, because I think that gives us a little bit more opportunity to take action, and I don't want to kind of be hamstrung by the way that we agendize the item. And I'm fine with a discussion item, kind of announcing or an announcement even of the. I mean, you could do it as an announcement. I'm not going to tell you how to do your agenda, but I understand the need, and I appreciate the need to, try to announce a public engagement plan as soon as possible, assuming staff thinks that they can move that quickly, which it seems like they do. I acquiesce. I don't love not being there. That kind of is to my chagrin, but I can't make the world stop turning just because I'm not here.
Would you restate your motion?
Yeah. So, resolve. Our goal is to resolve the issue of pass-throughs, including retroactivity, by our first meeting in March, May, not March. To agendize a public hearing, including discussions or reports from stakeholders on March 22nd. And to have an announcement or discussion item on the first announcing our public engagement plan.
And we will do it as a full body, all 5 of us.
I mean, I can't. You're talking about like on a
not
going forward basis.
Yeah.
And we reject.
We'll deliberate
on
the dais.
Yeah. Option A.
Option A.
And can I make an amendment, friendly amendment?
I mean, you gotta tell me the amendment first.
Sorry, there's a second, but with a friendly amendment. I would also ask that we solidify who we would like to invite to speak on the 22nd, before the 22nd. So I guess Nicole's not going to be happy, because how do we do that? Well, we might want to do that on March 1st, and you're not going to be here.
I mean, I can.
You're going to get this.
No, I can give direction to staff too.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that I would also like us to be thinking about who we want to invite and solidify some people.
I might just invite someone directly and just like sneak techno.
No, I mean that I think if we have personal contacts that we know of that we would like to invite,
so to
make a presentation.
Friendly amendment accepted?
Yeah, just to solidify who we're inviting.
Okay, so to be clear, we have a motion before us to explain the public engagement campaign at the March 1st meeting and potentially decide which specific groups or individuals to invite to a March 22nd.
Just to give direction.
To give direction to staff to a March 22nd public hearing, and by the first meeting of May.
With their proposals.
With their proposals, and by the first meeting in May, resolve the issue of property tax pass-throughs and how they affect rents. We have a first and a second.
Not just property tax pass-through, voter indebtedness
pass-through. Thank you very much for the clarification. Does staff have any questions before we, for any clarification? Okay, very good. Can we please call the roll?
Commissioner Trosis.
Yes.
Commissioner Flora.
Yes.
Commissioner Phyllis.
Yes.
Commissioner Duran.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yay.
Yes, it does. All right, thank you very much for that. And we are moving on to our last item of the night. It is item 12B, mid-year budget report for fiscal year 2017-2018. Take it away, staff.
All right. So this mid-year report is presented to update the board on the agency's financial experience as of December 31st, 2017. This is primarily an information item, although tonight we also need the board to authorize us to enter into a repayment plan with the city for the $500,000 PERS paydown loan that the city council made on behalf of the board in June. I'll explain more about that in a couple of minutes. The written report details the board's financial experience in the first half of the fiscal year in quite a bit of detail. I'm just going to give you highlight a few items here. So in June of 2017, the board adopted a fiscal year 17-18 budget of approximately $5,182,000 in expenditures and $5,270,000 in revenue, resulting in a projected surplus of $89,000 for the fiscal year. At mid-year, revenue collected was slightly more than the total amount projected for the fiscal year. Expenditures for most line items were in line with projections, with a few line items showing potentially significant savings by year-end, and a couple of line items showing over-expenditures by year-end. As is summarized on the chart on page 3 of the report, total revenue by mid-year was almost $5,274,000. If our projections for the remainder of the year are correct, we should end the year having collected just over $35,000 more than originally projected, or total revenue of $5,306,000. Due to concerted efforts to collect past due fees, registration fee collections are projected to be almost $40,000 more than originally anticipated. This will offset the lower than projected application filing fees, administrative record filing fees, and miscellaneous revenue collections. On page A1 of the report, which is the last page, the back shows a summary of our expenditures. The first column identifies the adopted budget. The mid-year expenditures are shown in the second column, and the overall fiscal year projections are in the green column. The second column from the right, marked budget variations, represents the difference between the adopted budget and our current end-of-year projections. Expenditures for the first half of the fiscal year totaled $2,241,000. Projections for the remainder of the year are based on actual year-to-date expenditures plus estimates of future spending built upon spending patterns and experience. The bottom line of the green column shows that the total projected expenditures for the year will be $5,094,000, which is about $87,000 less than originally adopted. I want to mention just a few of the expenditure items. In the salary and wages section of the budget, we're anticipating year-end expenditures of just over $200,000 less than originally projected. With respect to staffing costs, a reduction of $165,000 in expenditures for permanent employees will offset the anticipated over-expenditure of $31,000 in the as-needed employee line. The reduced cost in the permanent employee line are attributable to savings from longer than anticipated recruiting periods to replace retiring employees, as well as hiring new employees at entry-level salaries. Additionally, one staff member has been on an extended medical leave, with the majority of that compensation this year being paid through state disability or workers' compensation. The adopted budget allocated almost $40,000 for services of as-needed employees, former board employees who have helped both the Public Information Department and the Hearings Department. Assistance for the Hearings Department includes one as-needed employee who conducts a majority of the mediations, and other as-needed employees who conduct hearings during busy times when the permanent hearing officers are unable to accommodate the volume of cases being filed. Given new case filings and the ongoing training of the hearing officer hired in October, we anticipate additional assistance will be required. We think we'll spend another $23,500 on as-needed expenses during this next portion of the fiscal year. which will result in an overexpenditure of about $31,000 on that line, which will be offset by the saving in the permanent salary line. With respect to retirement contributions, the projections show that based on the salaries of all permanent and as-needed employees, we pay those retirement contributions. We're currently projecting savings of about $95,000. Just under half of the projected savings are related to the savings in the permanent employees salary line. The remainder of the projected savings are a result of the City Council's decision to make that significant or $45 million prepayment or pay down of the PERS outstanding costs. That resulted in a reduction in our PERS factor of 1.87% and reduced this year's PERS contributions by about $49,000. But recognizing that the board had not budgeted for more than a $500,000 PERS paydown, when the City Council elected to make that paydown, they also voted to loan funds from the general fund to the rent control fund to cover the board's portion of the paydown. The board must now incorporate this additional cost into the budget and enter into a repayment plan with the city. If the board elects to repay the $519,000 loan over 10 years, the savings projected from the retirement line this year can be used to, for the first loan payment that would be just over $55,000, reducing the projected retirement savings this year to about $39,000, as shown in the expenditures table. We can talk a little bit more about the loan repayment in just a minute. With respect to health insurance costs, the adopted budget reflected anticipated increases in health insurance costs of between 10% or generally of 10%. One of the insurance plans increased by 5%, but the others did not increase at all, so we have savings related to the medical costs. With respect to the computer systems, this budget this year included significant investments for replacement of our legacy database. We had about $180,000 in the budget. Last November, we met with staff from other rent control jurisdictions to talk about what technology they're using, the databases that they've developed. We shared a lot of information about system functionality, conversion and implementation costs, annual maintenance costs, and potential upgrade of enhancement costs. The other agencies that have needs similar to ours have found those development costs to be between $300,000 and $500,000. We also last fall did a request for information where we sent out through the city's purchasing process a request for vendors to respond to what we specified as our needs for this new system. We had 3 vendors respond. We invited them to come and present their ideas for a database replacement project for us. The RFI process does not really include a cost for them to tell us exactly what the cost would be. So we're now working on a scope of work that will go out to these vendors, and we'll ask them to tell us what will their projected costs be to actually complete this project, as well as a timeline. And so we're working on the very detailed scope of work at this point. But based upon the time estimates that the vendors provided in their responses to the request for information, we do not anticipate being able to do this project for less than $300,000. So our recommendation is, and once we enter into a contract, it's very common to agree for what the cost will be, and even if it goes into future years, we need to encumber those funds so that we're committed to paying those funds in the future. So we're anticipating that we could overspend the computer upgrade line by about $120,000 this year. But even doing that, and with the other reduced expenditures, we think we'll have approximately $210,000 that can go into the board's reserve fund at the end of this year for the future. So that's where we are right now. And the action that I do need you to take tonight is to authorize me to enter into a repayment plan with the city for the little more than $500,000. They've offered us 3 different payment plans, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Our recommendation would be to enter into a 10-year plan, which would be annual payments of just over $55,000. They've said that we can prepay at any time. We can pay additional payments with no penalty. But the 10-year payment would allow us most easily to fit that expenditure into future budgets, as opposed to a 5-year plan, which would be a $108,000 annual payment. So our recommendation is to authorize me to enter into a repayment plan with the city for a 10-year repayment plan.
Point of procedure. Are we allowed to take action on administrative items?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, Commissioner. Thank you to staff for that very thorough report. Commissioner Flora, you are first in the queue with a question.
Well, I'm sorry. I think my question was just answered, which was about making additional payments to what we owe the city without penalty. I will speak in support of a motion to authorize you to work on this. I mean, a 1.3 to stave off 1.8 sounds like a net savings to me in percent. But I did want to ask, so it's good to know about early payments. Could we use, if we are lucky enough in a particular year to say have a small surplus? It's small, we could do rebates to renters, but if it's only 5 digits, that's not going to be a lot of money for landlords or tenants. Would it be a good policy to use any surpluses we have toward this loan as just a general?
Well,
would it be a better use, obviously, or would we need something as big as hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it worthwhile?
Well, I think that we're going to try and project how long. I know that the board is very interested in maintaining the registration fee at what it is now for as long as we can, just like we have traditionally in the past. We will be looking at as we prepare the next budget, we're going to look at what are the projected increases in costs. And if we have money to put into the reserve, like this year we're anticipating approximately $210,000 can go into the reserve. That helps us maintain the registration fee at $198. If we use all of that to pay towards this loan, then we could potentially have to increase the registration fee more quickly.
That's true.
So I think we have to evaluate that depending upon where we are at any time. But we can pay any additional amount toward the loan at any time that we want, that we feel comfortable doing that without a prepayment penalty.
And Madam Chair, my only other question for staff was, I did want to get a sense of what is our particular reserve standing at currently, ballpark?
It's about $1.1 million, and we have a policy and practice of reserving enough to cover usually 5 to 10% of the annual budget, plus the costs of employee-earned vacation and sick time that hasn't been used. So we have sufficient to cover that. But you know, you raised the registration fee last year because had we not done that, we would have the reserve would have been reduced below that number that we, right.
All right. Commissioner Phyllis. Okay. Commissioner Duran.
Yes. All right. So I'm looking at the repayment plan, and I'm loath to pay $17,000 more because we've extended it to a 10-year plan from a 5-year. I understand how difficult the 5-year plan would be, but that would end up long-term saving the board more money in terms of the interest. And so I'm willing to, I want to defer to staff because you have more expertise in terms of setting the annual budgets year to year than I do. But I would really want to make the point now that to the extent that if we have to go with a 10-year payment plan because it's better for us budget-wise, that we make every effort to pay early so that we can reduce the interest that we have to pay out. I just don't know how hard it would be to stick with a 5-year plan in terms of budgeting every year that $108,000. Maybe you can address in terms of comparing what that would entail, like how much hardship that would create to do that as opposed to the 10-year plan. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense. As I said, we can always prepay something, which would also reduce the interest. But committing to a 5-year plan and committing to paying $108,000 would likely result in the board having to increase the registration fee more quickly than the 10-year plan. So in recognition of the board's desire to maintain the registration fee, that's why we've recommended the 10-year plan. It could be done, but it could reduce the reserve more than we would generally prefer to do that. But, you know, if things end up the way they do this year, we might be able to make additional payments this year that would reduce that interest. And when you think of the difference in interest of $17,000 over 10 years, we're talking $1,743 a year over 10 years.
Well, that's true. It's a good point. It's just, you're right.
One meeting.
One TV session. Okay, I understand that. It's just I look at the numbers and I hate to pay more when we don't have to, but it is what it is. Thank you.
1.3% interest rate is a pretty good
That's
interest
pretty good.
rate to
Agreed.
reduce our PERS and save $49,000 this year.
Agreed.
I think it was a good decision the city made to make a payment towards the unfunded liability.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Trosis.
Yeah, sorry, you probably covered this when I was in the bathroom. What is the prepayment penalty if we prepay?
No penalty.
No penalty.
Right.
Okay. I don't think I really have any questions. This was very thorough. I originally agreed with Commissioner Duran that I didn't really want to pay more in interest, but I completely understand why you're doing this. Oh, did we hire the new hearing officer that we recruited for? Who is that? I've never heard about that. Who is that person?
Her name's Tracy Maddie Daub, and she's been with us since October. She's held several hearings and issued several decisions, and she's jumped right in, and we're very happy to have her with us.
Great. And is there like a reduction in the temp usage as a result of that?
We anticipate that there will be. It depends upon the level of filings. So we are continuing to use the as needed, but our intention is over the long run that we will not need to use the as needed as much as we have.
And per what I think I read in here, we're kind of on track with our litigation budget as well. Counselor? Yes, okay. All right, no questions. I'm prepared to approve your make a motion to authorize you to enter into the repayment agreement at the 10-year option.
Okay, before we get to the motion, I have a few comments of my own. First of all, for the public and anyone who might be wondering what all this mumbo-jumbo is about, we are unique in this city in that taxpayer dollars in general in the city, tourists, residents, do not pay for this board or this agency. Landlords and tenants equally pay. No square footage, no bedroom number considerations, nothing. Number of units divided, split 50-50 with the landlord. So everybody in the city that's in a rent-controlled apartment pays about $8 and change per month. It's called the reg fee, the registration fee. It is on the worksheet when your rents are adjusted every year on September 1st. So in case you're wondering where the $5 million comes from, I think it's a fun fact that it is wholly and fully funded by building owners and tenants together. Also, we are, in case anyone's wondering why the employee columns, like they are in most businesses, is so high, it's because we're a service-oriented agency. 85% of what we do is community outreach, answering people's questions, holding hearings. So it's a very service-oriented, employee-oriented agency, and we're proud to oversee such a wonderful agency that does so much for the tenants and landlords. The database is a very important component. I would like to ask staff when you think we might hear a report from the subcommittee, because while you've updated us once or twice when it has come up as part of a budgetary item, we haven't yet heard more of a detailed report about, I'm just asking, can I pause to ask when we might hear something from a subcommittee?
Yeah, we're going to be setting up a meeting hopefully in the next week or two with the subcommittee to talk, and we can prepare a subcommittee report for the next meeting or the meeting after that. We have been doing a lot of work at the staff level and working with the city's information systems division, who has provided a project manager to assist us with this. But we'll be updating the subcommittee, and then we can bring a presentation or a report to you.
Do you have a question for staff, Commissioner Trosas?
Oh my God.
I'm still.
No, so I believe we are meeting not this week, but next week. I was under the impression that we kind of retooled our approach because we initially thought we were going to have an off-the-shelf solution. No, okay, no.
I was also under the impression that the technology subcommittee was kind of in a holding pattern until we had more clarity, particularly on this on the revamp of the computer system. So,
wait, I thought
so if
that
I misunderstood, I'm completely
yeah,
sorry.
Maybe I
but I think
too.
we.
All right, just a moment. So to clarify, so my question may not be timely, and if so, staff can address that.
No, it's okay. We are meeting. I just wanted to clarify that didn't we not initially think that we were going to go with the city approach to designing
We would love
it?
to find an off-the-shelf package,
but it wasn't.
there is no
Yeah,
such thing.
okay.
Yeah, and we pretty much knew that wasn't likely to be the case, but. Yeah, we've met with all of the other jurisdictions. They're not happy with what they have in Berkeley. They've invested a lot of money in it. It doesn't quite do what they want. So that's why we got together with all the other jurisdictions to see what we could share with each other. And but the subcommittee, we've really been doing the primary work at the staff level, but I do want to inform the subcommittee of where we are and get their input, and then we can bring something back to you.
Good. That's all I wanted, just an update as to if there was any activity yet. And if there's not yet, that's fine. We look forward to hearing it. And I'm, so you answered the prepayment penalty question that I also had, always a big consideration when repaying loans. And since we have it, you have the budget under control, as always, and we appreciate that. You have our faith and our respect for always, the whole staff, always taking very close care of people's money, and we really appreciate that. I'm in very much favor of the 10-year plan, because $1,000 and change a year is not too much to pay for the stability to the tenants and the landlords and to our budget of everything we've already said. I would like to salute Commissioner Todd Flora on his last budget. I know that you've mentioned many times over the last few years how much you love working on the budget, and we appreciate all the expertise you've provided over all these years on budget matters.
Well, thank you. I love working on the budget so much I would do it on the weekends. Again, I'm just going to reiterate. But no, my last budget is June.
Oh, it's June.
I get to
Sorry.
do one more. Yeah. But thank you. I'll take a compliment anytime.
I'll congratulate you again in June. Yes, Commissioner Foss. All right, do you want to restate your motion?
I'm sorry, are there public comment slips for this item?
No, there are not.
Things standing there.
I move that we authorize the executive director to enter into the 10-year repayment plan with the city for the $519,000 and change PERS paydown.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a first and a motion and a second. Can we take the roll?
Commissioner Flora.
Yes.
Commissioner Duran.
Yes.
Commissioner Phyllis.
Yes.
Commissioner Trosas.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. That's it for our agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Do we have a move to it? We have a motion
Second.
to adjourn and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.